Hello everyone and welcome to our first ever sustainable travel webinar. My name is Kelsall and I'm the CEO of the Ker Downey Africa Group. I'd like to take a couple of moments just to set the scene for today's webinar. Now, we believe that this past year has been a pivotal one for the conversation around sustainability in the global travel industry, and that now, as the world begins its unprecedented vaccination rollout program, the time is right to lean further into the conversation about creating a sustainable future for travel to Africa. Now, in the midst of the disruption and the devastation of COVID-19, many of us in the profession have had a chance to reflect on what our underlying purpose is, or as Simon Sinek would say, or why. And at Ker Downey Africa, I think we've determined that it's always been ultimately about the preservation and protection of the biodiversity and culture of the destinations and regions that we serve. Now, undoubtedly, this will be a difficult conversation for our profession. For example, we have to carefully weigh up the environmental damage caused by transportation to and in destinations against the essential and mission-critical conservation work that tourism supports. However, with carbon offsetting and the adoption and promotion of the concept of slow travel, I believe our industry is already and willing to evolve to ensure that support continues in a more sustainable way. We are fortunate to have an incredible panel with us today to exercise their minds on this and many more questions, and they will be hosted by our very own Marcelo Novais, the Managing Director of our North American division, who has over 20 years experience curating world-class luxury trips to Africa. He is the perfect host for today's call. Over to you, Marcelo.
Lee, as Lee just mentioned, my name is Marcelo Novais, and I'm the Managing Director of Ker Downey Africa North America DMC. I started my career in the luxury travel industry over 20 years ago in São Paulo, Brazil, and relocated to South Africa to join Ker Downey Africa Group in 2015. I headed to South America. the South American business before expanding into the North American markets in November 2018. Sustainable tourism is paramount to the future of the travel industry and comes down to the consideration of the people, wildlife, and environment of the places that we visit. Today, we aim to showcase some incredible initiatives offered by our panelists and explore the future of responsible travel to Africa and how we can encourage the luxury market to travel with purpose. We are honored to be joined today by pioneers in the industry that share our ethos in responsible travel, who I will introduce after a few housekeeping matters. Today's webinar will take a form of panel discussion. Our aim is to explore the future of sustainable travel to Africa, particularly in the luxury safari market. We have a number of pre-planned discussion topics, as well as some great questions to the field that have been sent in from journalists, agents, and other suppliers. We will do our best, but we may not cover everyone's questions in the time we have set aside. Lastly, the session will be recorded. We will make it available online and share the link with everyone when it's live on our YouTube page. Please remember to follow our YouTube page. And joining me today are leaders in sustainable travel to Africa. We have the CEO and founder of the Moore Family Collection, Robert Moore. The collection was founded in April 2001 with the opening of its first lodge in Lion Sands Private Game Reserve. Today, the operation has expanded to include 6 lodges and 3 hotels, from the Cape to Victoria Falls, employing 845 people. We have also James Hai joining us from the Lemala Collection in Tanzania. Hi, James. James has worked across the African continent for over 3 decades, and will share how Lemala integrates sustainability to leave a light footprint on Africa. We have Sally Cooper joining us from Gibb's farm in Tanzania. Sally will share information on the sustainable practices at the property, as well as the incredible initiatives to empower the local communities in Tanzania. We have Gus Van Dyke joining us from Tswalu Kalahari. Gus is the executive of wildlife and conservation and holds personal responsibility for the care of the properties, 114,000 hectares, the largest private game reserve in South Africa. We look forward to hearing his insights in the future of sustainable travel to Africa. We have Julie Cheaton, is an independent management consultant with a specialization in business strategy and sustainability, and join us to represent the long run. Julie is working with Tswalu Kalahari to excel in following the highest standards of sustainability and encompassing conservation, community, culture, and commerce. We also have Catherine Gilson joining us from Born Free Big Cat Rescue and Education Centers at Shamwari Private Game Reserve in South Africa. She has facilitated and arranged the rescue of numerous lions and leopards from horrendous situations of captivity across the world, and continues work closely with the Born Free head office in the UK with various rescue missions. And we also have Haley Walls and Jono Hudson joining us from Matetsi Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe. Haley and Jono will shed the light on the property's inspired conservation story, as well as the work being done to uplift empower local community in the area. And lastly, my colleague Lisa Nell joined us to share additional insights from our tour operator's perspective. Thanks for joining, everyone. I'm really happy to have you all here with us. And right, let's kick off with our first discussion topic. First question, first topic. Why is responsible travel, particularly in Africa, so important? Haley, can you start with us, please?
Sure. Thank you very much, Marcelo, and thank you to Ker Downey Africa for the opportunity and for including Matetsi Victoria Falls in this great roundup of professionals. So we believe that we have been put on this earth to protect our wild spaces for wildlife and future generations, and inspire others to do the same. Tourism is therefore a vital industry that creates a significant number of jobs, particularly in which individuals can upskill and develop themselves. At Matetsi Victoria Falls, we employ over 130 incredible individuals, and any one of them can actually have the opportunity to develop and create a better future for themselves. For example, we have Simon, who actually started cleaning pools with us and then became a key part of our maintenance team. He went on to show a huge passion for cooking, and he is now one of our chef de parties in the kitchen. Yeah. So we really encourage this kind of development and empowerment across our teams. Tourism operators have the possibility of protecting vast areas of land and water systems. For example, Matetsi Private Game Reserve is a vast 136,000 acre wilderness concession, the conservation of which is supported by the activity on property at Matetsi Victoria Falls. Our team engage on a daily basis with our guests, providing knowledge of the local fauna and flora in this beautiful and special part of Africa. In addition, this helps create awareness regarding the threats, and hence, together, our team and our guests, whilst out on a game drive, for example, become the wildlife guardians, which in turn creates a positive human presence and deters possible poaching activity. By welcoming travelers from across the globe, we are able to continue on our conservation journey. Tourism also offers a unique scenario to connect in person with community and conservation projects. It is therefore key to responsible travel that travelers, when planning a trip to Africa, research the area that they are traveling to and align themselves with the conservation and community initiatives that are specific to those areas, so as to really understand the impact that their tourism dollar is making, and where possible, get involved on a deeper level, either through direct contribution or possibly involvement whilst they're actually visiting us. Thanks very much.
Yeah, and Robert, what is your perspective on it?
Marcelo, thanks. So just the two words I'd like to emphasize or talk to. One is responsible travel. Just firstly, responsible travel is unique to different parts of the world. It has different meanings in different parts of the world, and I think then that leads to the second part of the word which you mentioned in the question, which is the relevance to Africa. And for me, you know, in a way, you know, just by way of example, it's less in essence about carbon footprint and pollution, you know, reduction. Of course, that plays a part of our strategy, but the major risk, you know, Africa is on a global stage. Where does it sit? You know, it's primarily known as the safari wildlife product within on the global stage. So we are already positioned in a very environmentally sensitive you know, position in terms of, again, as I mentioned, on the global stage. So Africa ticks that box. We therefore, you know, responsible travel. What does that mean when one is looking at the continent of Africa? And I think one needs to delve deeper into understanding exactly what the risks and threats are to conservation in Africa. And it's, in a way, in my opinion, it is less about carbon footprint and more about the realities of inequality, growing a populace who are not benefiting from an eco economy. And those are just some, and you know, and the output of that is sometimes subsistence farming. Sometimes you get the criminality of organized crime, which we're seeing around the rhino. So I think, you know, why is responsible travel important to Africa? It is obviously the commercial side of tourism, which is the customer coming to visit, is one of the three key pillars, being community conservation and commercialization, which is the guest. And I know we're going to chat to that a little bit later. My point really here is that the perception around responsible travel in my opinion, for Africa, is around understanding the challenges on the ground and making sure that those three pillars of conservation, community, and commercialization are correctly balancing each other out. Because in doing that, we can sustain the magnificence of the delicate ecosystems that have not been turned into agriculture. You know, they remain pristine and wild compared to other parts of the world. So it's really digging a little bit deeper, understanding our risks, and focusing on dealing with those risks will, you know, and putting that into the concept of responsible travel. I hope that's been sort of clear.
Very clear, actually. James, can you shed some light on the responsible travel's importance in the East Africa?
Yeah, thank you, Marcelo. Crikey, I'm going to try and distill 3 decades worth of work into 3 minutes. So I've started the stop clock already. I want to try and approach this from not an emotional angle, but from a factual angle to set the scene for why tourism dominates our conversations in Tanzania in particular. Fully 38% of national land in Tanzania is under management. There are 17 national parks, 29 game reserves, 40 controlled areas, all of which, bar one, the Serengeti, were created post-independence in 1961. Now, that land use is enshrined in our constitution. It actually says, quote, source of wonder and inspiration for future generations, and an integral part of our natural resources and future likelihood and well-being, which I think draws into the conversation both the cultural elements and then the future financial benefits. And I think historically, Tanzania has delivered on that pledge. In 1998, our tourism arrivals were about 500,000. In the 20 years up until 2018, I'm not even going to talk about 2020, that rose up to $1.5 million. That is roughly 18% of our GDP in Tanzania, the single largest contributor, and about 20% of employment. And that's if you disregard the multiplier effect of how many people are supported out of each salary. However, at the same time, as Rob says, as Rob mentioned, our population now stands at 59 million. It was about 6 at independence in the 60s. So a massively large number of people sort of living off the land. And obviously that leads to some inevitability, pressure on wildlife population via encroachment into protected areas, and inevitably the human-wildlife conflict, and sadly a number of deaths, which are then blamed on wildlife. So whilst Tanzania land use is impressive, it's under incredible threat. So example, between Tarangire National Park and Manyara National Park in the northern part of Tanzania, fully 20% of the land that was previously uninhabited, uncultivated, has been cultivated since 1987. So in a relatively short period of time. And our land use policy here is increasingly focused on poverty, human rights, especially indigenous people, so the guys local to the national parks. I suppose to close this off, of course, all safari tourism accesses funds that might otherwise have stayed overseas in the Western world and brings it into the national coffers. I think the interesting thing about sustainable tourism is that it ensures that those funds are distributed into the areas where they're needed and into areas where the local people benefit most. Without their support, nothing else will happen. That was just exactly 33 minutes.
Well, thank you, everyone. And our second discussion topic. As we have heard, responsible wildlife tourism has the potential to enhance conservation efforts, as well as empower local communities. How does this work at Gibbs, Sally? Gibbs Farm?
Well, I guess Gibbs Farm is sort of unique in regards to a safari property because Gibbs Farm was actually first established as a farm. So it started off over 100 years ago in 1923. It was started as a coffee plantation. James has already highlighted the number of tourism attractions in Tanzania that bring tourists into this area. From the highest point of Mount Kilimanjaro to the deepest lake in Tanganyika. So the natural resources in this area have been bringing people into Tanzania on safari to appreciate the wildlife for over 100 years. Gibbs was first established as a coffee plantation, and then after World War II, it was taken over by Margaret and James Gibbs as a farm, and the working farm for 100 years now has employed over 100 people from our local community. The farm initially supplied safari trucks coming in to pass through Karatu to go into the Serengeti or back from the Serengeti to Kilimanjaro with fruit and vegetables, fresh produce as well as fuel and water that we have on the land here. And one of the things that Gibbs has done is it's kept the farm as organic and sustainable. Nothing's wasted on the farm. So we feed all of the staff, so it's 137 staff right now, and all of the guests that come to the property, 80% of what we feed them comes directly from the farm. All of the green waste goes back into compost or feeding the animals that we have on the farm. The grey water goes back into irrigation of the agriculture that we have on the farm. And we also work with our local community, in addition to employing those 137 people that each support in turn about 6 people in our local community. We have internship programs. We bring people from the community in to learn more about farming, sustainable farming, and how to work crop rotation and also companion farming so that it has less of an impact on the environment. They're getting longer growing seasons here. They're learning about composting, and maintaining moist soils so they're not losing water, which is a vital resource here in Africa, of course. And we also support initiatives like the amenities that we have in the rooms, the items that we sell in our boutique are all sourced from local community groups. So we work with local artisans, women's group in terms of art and crafts, and we really try to promote Tanzanian-made produce all through the property as well, supporting community groups in their small and medium businesses, not giving a cash handout, but having them actually produce and develop small businesses that we can support. We also have an artist in resident program with young up-and-coming Tanzanian artists can come and live on the property, where we accommodate them and feed them and look after them, give them a studio to work out of so that they can produce art. We try to have sculptural as well as two-dimensional at the same time, that exposes them to a tourism market and allows them to promote the artwork that they're doing also. The current owners have had the property for more than 20 years, and they've just established through that also a not-for-profit that helps with education in the area, and through that we've established schools in our local community. We support librarians and teachers as a way of further educating the up-and-coming population, the next generation around Gibbs Farm. So I guess in a nutshell, that's sort of what we do to try and empower and help our local communities here.
Beautiful work. And Robert, what about More Family Collection?
Marcelo, so it's such an important topic, this, and I mean the bottom line is without a tourist coming to these areas, we simply put, they cannot be protected. And the areas that we are particularly, or that we are based in, every time I go there, I always remind myself that these areas are untouched, unspoiled, never been changed. Yes, there is infrastructure. Yes, there are lodges, but the blocks of vacant land are the way they have been since the beginning of time. And with, again, in looking at the sustainable model, without a guest visiting, and sometimes I don't think they quite understand this, the guest that is coming, that without them coming out to Africa, staying at any of the lodges, we are simply unable to protect these areas. Whether it's a re-establishment of an area that was previously used as agriculture, whether it's an area that's been untouched and natural and pristine, without a guest, you're unable to protect that area. So that's just, I'd always like to emphasize and underline that. The contribution, so just by way of example, at one of our lodges, Lion Sands, it has 26 rooms between the different lodges that exist at this one particular reserve. It employs 260 people who, within this area, there isn't too many other industries. So therefore, the level of unemployment actually in our area is sitting closer to 40%. The average within South Africa is at 26%. So we have a far higher unemployment rate within these remote rural areas. So therefore, that heightens the importance even more so of those jobs. Within a year, it's taken us a while to develop it, because we've over a long time, we've developed relationships with entrepreneurs in the area to absorb some of our procurement spend. So just those 26 rooms, we were able to employ 26 people, and annually we're able to inject approximately $15 million into that eco-dependent economy. And again, at a high level, without that, or in a simplified level, without that guest coming in, we would not be able to inject that kind of value into the economy, into the local economy. And you know, for me, the key objective of a sustainable ecotourism area is to ensure that the value, the commercial value of what the lodges are needing to purchase and to acquire, it doesn't flow back to suppliers, for example, based here in South Africa, back to Johannesburg. It needs to stay local. It needs to be invested back into these little microeconomies, because in so doing, the communities that are sitting outside, as James alluded to as well, the population growth is one of the risks that we're facing. But if they start to understand the value of these wilderness areas, then by being included in that economy, then it's in their interest to protect it. So the guest comes in, contributes, brings in the commercial value, which then goes out to the community. They extract value from that, be either direct employment or through procurement process, and they in turn then feed back into conservation, and they then become the ultimate protectors of these areas. And that's been our kind of mantra and goal right from when we started to try and achieve that. And in doing that, there are so many wonderful, it's upskilling, it's business development, it's schools, it's creches. There are many different projects which are often found alongside these conservation areas. And that main objective is to get the local population up to a certain level of skills that they can then participate in this ecotourism economy. So that's our kind of long-term strategy, is to get that balance between those three pillars.
Yeah, for sure. James, what responsible travel initiatives are in place at the Lemala Collection? Sorry, you are on mute.
I was trying to be respectful to Rob and not interrupt him with my bustling papers. My apologies. Having dealt with why it's important, it's great to be able to explain the what and what we actually do to try and deliver and to ameliorate those impacts. So our opinion is that enhancing conservation efforts and empowering local communities they are mutually dependent. You cannot have one without the other. And that if a tourism entity is truly to be a custodian for its future generations, which I think is all our ambition, then that must be reflected in its management structure and the culture it creates, both for its employees and its stakeholders and its partners overseas, as well as its local communities. So, for example, dealing things from the top down. Within Lemala, we have an exco, a management committee. 7 people, 5 are ladies. The 2 gentlemen keep their mouths shut a great deal, which a lot of people that know me would find quite difficult to believe. At the same time, we only have 2 expatriates. Where 1/3 of our local staff were born, raised, and still live adjacent to Tangiri National Park, Manyara National Park, Ngorongoro Conservation Area, or the Serengeti. We're very much about working with people in the wider community, not just in the 1 kilometre buffer zone outside a national park, which seems to occur so often. At the end of the day, our future decisions in Tanzania will be made by an urban population, and we hope that will be drawn from a rural population that has been empowered and is able to influence decisions. We can't afford to have an urban elite making all the decisions in wildlife areas. We also operate in Uganda on the banks of the River Nile. We have a private island in the middle of the river. Believe it or not, 98% of the people were actually involved in building the lodge. And when I tell you that they had to bring the generators and the stones across the river in a dugout canoe, it was literally that kind of community involvement. And those people are still there. And very fortunately for us, just at the moment, even though we've got no revenue coming in, they're still employed and still participating actively in the country. If we go out to an area called Mutuumbu, which, believe it or not, means Mosquito River, on the way out to Ngorongoro, we've helped create a micro-enterprise scheme with a gentleman called Sunday that empowers ladies to manufacture disposable, recyclable banana leaf lunchboxes, which goes along with the fact that we've banned water bottles in all our camps. That has led to the expansion of his project into guiding around that local town, which I believe should be an example for all towns just on the outskirts of national parks, to show what an African town can be if well run and clean and pleasant for tourists to have an on-the-ground experience. And those tours are run by tuk-tuks with young ladies, and we've actually just employed, and she's passed our in-house guiding program, a lady called Mary, who's graduated from that program to guide people on the ground in Serengeti National Park. So we're taking people out of areas where there's restricted opportunity and creating opportunity for them. couple of examples. Thank you.
Gus, can you share information on Tswalu's responsible travel initiatives?
Yeah, hi. Tswalu is actually a very good example of what can be achieved with already denuded and let's say damaged areas. So Tswalu consists entirely of previously farmed, inappropriately farmed areas. And over the last 20, 25 years, we've been slowly restoring and acquiring these properties. And as our property has developed and as the tourism interest has increased, so we've been able to increase the footprint of this incredible protected area. So we're up to 114,000 hectares, as you mentioned earlier. And what really has been incredible is just how resilient Africa, nature, wildlife is, that over the last 20 years, the self-healing that we have seen from Mother Nature has really attracted a lot of attention. And so now Tswalu is an enclave of protected species, rare and endangered species that we never thought would return or flourish. And in some cases, we've helped restore those species in the larger species, but in many of the cases, it's for example, pangolin. Those populations have recovered all by themselves. And so the tourism product that is developing around these unusual animals is quite extraordinary. In turn, then some of the more endangered species, for example, like rhino, we've had to provide a security support for those species and other endangered species. And actually that security net that we've established has actually turned out to be quite a significant assistance to our communities around us. We're very isolated and far from large communities, but the very small pockets of people around us, or even some of the local farmers, certainly have benefited from the presence of Tswalu security around the property as well. Tswalu has also focused now over the last 20 years, because of our position in on the subcontinent, roughly between the transition between the arid west and the more mesic east, we're very well placed to see climate change influences or to be able to measure those as the subcontinent appears to be drying. So that's just one of the subjects that our research, we have the Tswalu Foundation and a research center on Tswalu, and we've started attracting some fairly significant projects into the area, people who are particularly interested in studying climate change. And our guests, the tourists that visit Tswalu and the Kalahari, are certainly or have an opportunity to be exposed to this cutting edge research. The foundation has been particularly active recently. Then perhaps more hands-on is, as I mentioned, we're in a really isolated and remote area, and the people around here have virtually no access to any kind of healthcare. So one of our projects that we've been pretty that we're quite proud of is with the help of a very dear tourist friend from Germany, we've been able to set up a healthcare center that is first world and state of the art, and with resources sent through from Germany, as well as then support from the South African provincial healthcare services and Tswalu. We've got a three-pronged healthcare center that caters to people who have no other options. And this is a significant benefit for the people in the region. And then the Tracker Academy, we have an academy set up on Tswalu as well now, where people with an aptitude for tracking, which many will realize is a dying art in Africa. People are brought in to be trained in tracking, and those tracking skills then are redeployed in the tourism industry largely. So that's a very exciting development in one of the more remote corners of Tswalu as well, a school where people are learning and developing their tracker skills. And then interestingly, I think perhaps some of you may have seen it, is the Tswalu contribution to the the global community in the form of Wild Earth. So during lockdown now, we've been part of the Wild Earth broadcast that has been sending game drive messages out to the whole live game drives out to the global community, and hopefully we're feeling that's keeping everybody's spirits uplifted, and people are getting to enjoy a little bit of the Kalahari as well.
Definitely. I am enjoying at least. Haley, can you share some insights into the story of Matetsi?
I'm going to let Jono tackle this one because he is on property. So over to you, Jono.
Great, Sally. And Marcelo, thanks. Ker Downey, once again, many thanks for this opportunity. So talking about responsivism and enhancing conservation, Matetsi Victoria Falls is the vision of the garden family. And this is to showcase everything exceptional about Zimbabwe. But however, before establishing the priority was bringing back the conservation and supporting communities along the way to ensuring for future generations life and the environment is still here. Through that, through our community empowerment, here on the property, we've got 100% some expats at all. We all fully Zim. There's about 134 of us property. 60% staff come from the Vic Falls area. Staff come from the rest of the country, talking from Harare, Bulawayo, Rwanda down in the cultures and but the scary thing is, which was mentioned earlier, is one of these people who employ are also probably supporting a family of between 6 and 10 people as well. So we need to be very cognizant and we've been very fortunate here on Matetsi, where everybody has been employed throughout COVID. A lot of us had to go out of our comfort zones and start doing various other jobs you don't normally do as a GM or as a waiter or a butler or a chef. There's been conservation efforts and works on the roads and all of that sort of thing as well. So, we're very, very fortunate. But it's coming back that them having a presence on the ground. And you're talking about protecting and looking after the area. Your wildlife sort of a lot happy. Fortunate we've had or anything throughout this whole COVID period, and purely because we've constantly got people on the ground to the south of the property. Big at Tswalu, size of 55,000 hectares, but we have constantly got out and about, driving, checking, seeing what's happening with the wildlife and all of that sort of thing. But when supporting of the rural communities and area, we partnered with an organization, Greenline Africa Trust, of a caring bunch of individuals and kids with families, broken, orphans, and that sort of thing. So we a project, Google project, which deals with old ladies who've opened their doors, opened their houses, all of that to disadvantaged kids and vulnerable children who need a bit of tender loving care. And so these ladies take them on, make sure they go to school, etc., make sure they're fed. They do a fantastic job of looking after more vulnerable in some of the rural areas on the Vic Falls area. We also pack with pack for a purpose. You can direct a lot of your clients to bring the right type of, be it sporting equipment, medical supplies, be it education tools for the orphanages and that type of thing, as well as going to the other extent and being able to, you'll have equipment for anti-poaching units, for security, be it torches, be it cameras, be it radios, be it and that sort of thing. So pack for a purpose is another great advantage where people don't have to pack too much luggage when leaving home. We hope they're going to fill their bag, bring equipment and the tool, and go and do a lot before they leave your nation, your country, and a lot of that stuff. You know, where we've got us doing and where we have little key rings and stuff, which is done ladies in prison, and they make little fluffy toy which people take back, and that gives them a little bit of support from that side as well. But the main conservation thing is making sure that you know, Matetsi Victoria opened up the roads. We've done about 550 kilometers of road network and access around property to ensure that that the area is protected. Property hadn't been used particularly much. If it had poaching and hunting because of the complete lack of movement of people. So opening it up, opening the road, the state team or conservation that we've got, as well as our guides going out, ensuring the property is protected. But the more people that you've got out, the better it is for the region as well, etc. Back to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My next question is, how does the tourism sector influence the work being done at the Born Free Foundation? Catherine.
Thanks, Marcelo. Thanks for having me, and hi to everybody. I'm speaking from a slightly different perspective today, as I represent Born Free, which is an international wildlife charity. So the work that Born Free does is on a global scale. We have projects in about 20 countries across the world. One of which is our big cat sanctuaries that we have here in the Eastern Cape at Shamwari Private Game Reserve. We have 2 sanctuaries here. We home lions and leopards that have been rescued from various situations of captivity, from zoos and circuses and horrendous captive conditions. One recent rescue that we had was actually a lion cub that was found in a Lamborghini on the Champs-Élysées, so which was confiscated by the French police, and who then contacted Born Free to see if they could find a forever home. So that particular lion is healthy and happy and living with us in one of our enclosures here. So just so that you get an idea as to what we do, here at Shamwari, with our sanctuaries here, we have natural large enclosures where these animals that have been born into captivity will never be able to be released into the wild, and we give them a second life, really. So almost a retirement home. Even though some of them are only a year old, they'll be with us for hopefully the next 20 years. So yes, that's our one project that Born Free works with here, and that I manage here locally. But the other African projects that we have include ones in Kenya, which is primarily dealing with lion conservation, wild lion conservation in areas that are very compromised. And as James was saying earlier about human-wildlife conflict, we work with the chimpanzees in Uganda, the Ethiopian wolves in Ethiopia, and we also have a rehabilitation center and sanctuary for Ethiopian wildlife there too. There's also the closer to home, a Zambian project where we look after some primates, where we have a primate sanctuary. We also sort of more on an international scale work with bears in Greece and tigers in India, and we have offices in the USA and Australia too. So it's a growing organization, pretty young for what it has achieved in its 37 years. But our project here at Shamwari has been going for the last just over 20 years. So it is a very important partnership that Born Free has with Shamwari, which, as guests come to Shamwari on a large scale, unfortunately not recently, as we're all in the same boat, to get the message out there of Born Free, of keeping wildlife in the wild, which is its motto, the ethos of compassionate conservation. We need tourists to be able to be educated on all of these topics. And we use the portal of our guests visiting here at Shamwari to be able to give that message across. So yeah, I mean, without that, we really, it's very difficult to actually just let our work be the message being passed far and wide, but also just as a charity is reliant on donations, on adoptions of animals, on people leaving legacies who, it's obviously something that we rely on to be able to just operate all our projects.
Yeah, create awareness.
Us in a nutshell.
Yeah, create awareness. I think it's really important for many tourists coming to Africa. When they come back to home, and create awareness of what's happening and how people can help and grow and support not only the wildlife, the communities as well. Julie, what is your perspective on this from the long run?
Thanks, Marcelo. Similar to Born Free and Catherine, tourism is really a key enabler for the work that we do in the long run, and can be an enabler of all of the good conservation, community and cultural based work that really needs to happen on a global scale. So who are we? The Long Run is a community of lodges and travel partners that are committed to protecting and regenerating the ecosystems in which we operate for the benefits, of everyone. It was founded in 2009 as a blueprint for nature-based businesses to really do good and to never be extractive or exploitative, and to always give back. So there are more than 50 members around the world now, and it's more of a movement than anything else. It's like-minded individuals. You opt into the Long Run. It's not a marketing organization. The commercial work is usually tourism, and that enables deep and impactful work in what we call the other 3 C's. So commerce is our first C, and then the conservation, community and cultural work is enabled to go further, deeper, wider, and have more impact because of that. The Long Run model is it's not a tick the box kind of exercise. If members opt in to join us on this journey, it's really a new way of operating their business for good. So it's kind of a management operating system where we look at all 360 degrees of the business with our incredible members, and together we figure out step by step how they can make small changes over many years, sometimes big changes in 1 year, but we work at a pace that everyone is comfortable with, while still stretching them and trying to inspire them and enable them through this community of good practice. So this is tourism really doing beyond what we might think from typical conservation perspective. It's really enabling, regeneration of land that would otherwise be lost, protecting cultures that might otherwise really die out, languages that we'll never hear spoken again, but also celebrating contemporary cultures and figuring out new ways of interpreting Africa and the rest of the world for the guests that come to these beautiful places. We have an incredible movement of members. We have, Tswalu Kalahari. I'm here this week, so Gus and I can kind of wave to each other, which is very exciting. But, being Africa focused, this conversation, I'll highlight, the amazing work that Tswalu has done has been largely enabled by tourism. Other members like, Kotters in Kenya, Segera, Volverdans in Namibia, you've got Grootbos Private Nature Reserve in South Africa. Tourism is the key vehicle that allows all of the amazing work that these great players in the industry are doing happens because of that redistribution of income via tourism. And the long run at the moment, we're really proud of this. We protect more than 23 million acres around the world now. And we just hope to keep being able to grow this momentum and help nature-based businesses to use tourism as a real force for positive change.
Continue with you, Julie and Gus. How has the global travel ban caused by COVID-19 affected conservation efforts?
Sure, I'll kick that off. So, I won't just speak from a Tswalu perspective, but just what we've seen from our African friends in our network is that on the negative, we've had so many jobs lost. In South Africa in particular, there's been a huge proportion of jobs lost in the tourism sector, and 2/3 of those jobs have been females. So the mums, the women in our communities that have lost their jobs. And with no income, a number of our properties have seen an escalation in poaching, in human and wildlife conflict, reneging on grazing agreements. But we must also understand that many concessionaires are not able to pay their concessionaires. So, there's a whole lot of ways that tourism would usually pay back and give back that stops because of COVID. However, I must say there's been such a resourceful response from members. So on the positive side, properties like Tswalu have managed to maintain their entire staff complement during this difficult time, which is just so inspirational to save jobs and to use their health center and to use outreach to be able to actually give food and medical assistance to people in need outside of the property. One of our other properties, our members rather, because we don't own these properties, as I said, it's a movement, Grootbos Private Nature Reserve managed to raise enough funds to serve more than 250,000 hot meals to date in response to COVID. So we've seen, these really negative impacts around the reduction of resources at our fingertips, but then we've seen really resourceful and inspirational responses to that. And at an industry level, I think that the rest of the value chain has started to see the importance of coming on board. So, we're seeing an increasing number of tour operators, agents, travel designers, and partners have a real interest in how can we make a difference? How can we send you guests that are going to meaningfully offer you assistance in what you're trying to achieve? And then the last point on this that I think we should make is the importance of income diversification has really hit home for properties, particularly, I'm only speaking from the African context now, but we've realized we can't rely only on travel and tourism. And so, we need to keep doing this valuable conservation work. Communities are really reliant on the properties to share value with them. And so how else can we do that? Could we look at, carbon credits, biodiversity credits, regenerative agricultural practices, we're all kind of having to go to the drawing board and really examine our reliance on travel and tourism, even though we're hoping that it resurges, that we can be more resilient looking forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's important to find other ways of getting more support for all these projects besides tourism as well. I agree, especially now that we have seen the way that COVID struck us. At Born Free Foundation, Catherine, how has it impacted you guys?
It has been very difficult to be able to carry on our essential services. So with having to care for animals that are reliant on us in the captive conditions that they're in, we've had to continue our everyday work, and to do that we've had to rely on donations from farmers for feed for the animals, and had to maintain special permits from the government to be able to move around when we were in lockdown level 5. But then on our education side of things, which has obviously been hard hit as well, and we see our upliftment and community programs, we fall under our education program. Our team has kind of been brought to a halt in a way, other than planning ahead and hoping that ahead is sooner rather than later. We've had upliftment programs within our local communities of Patterson and Alasdair here in the Eastern Cape, where 90% of our staff are employed from and need support from their families. Salaries have been cut, jobs have been lost, there have been retrenchments. And so for us as Born Free, which is a UK-based charity, we've tried to maintain the support within the local communities even while everybody was in lockdown. So one of our projects, which is a beautiful ladies group that we formed, we provided sewing and beading and training for these ladies who've been unemployed for a very long time. They have launched a mask project, and we've been able to put them in contact with various different game reserves in the area and other establishments to be able to supply their masks, their staff masks from their sewing project, which is great. COVID unfortunately has affected them and put a halt because of isolation and quarantining times. But we hope to be able to start moving around a little bit more now. But we really have felt that the travel ban has put a definite stop on our rescue projects. We have 4 lions waiting in Lyon to be able to be brought to South Africa, and because of airlines that are not moving in and out of the country and borders being closed, we're not able to move forward with that. So there have been certainly hurdles, but many positives that have come out of it as well. I think many partnerships forged when people have actually looked at things on at a different angle perhaps. And there has definitely been a more focus on humanitarian issues, which is enheartening, and I hope it continues. So really just our outreach programs are something that we hope to just continue very soon again, but that all depends on how we control the vaccine outlay in this country.
We are all expecting the vaccination to roll out quickly and in a good way so that we can all go back to a certain normality of life. Hayley and Jonah, has Matetsi conservation and community programs been affected by the global travel bans?
Thanks, Marcelo. I think, I echo very much what Julie has said with regards to obviously job losses, loss of income, that has obviously seen an increase in poaching, obviously the loss of revenue because of the reduction in specifically global tourism, international tourism. And then obviously conservation has been, greatly reduced and affected by that. Fortunately, on Matetsi Private Game Reserve, what we've actually been able to do, because of the result of having such a big team on property, we've actually increased our anti-poaching activities. A lot of our team have got involved in that, and This has obviously really helped to kind of create that, constant conservation effort, the positive human presence remains, etc. Something that we also did very early on in lockdown is we just decided to really give it a full go to appeal to our local market within Zimbabwe. And we've actually had an overwhelming response to that. We've been very fortunate to be very well supported by the local community in, sorry, Jono, you just need to mute yourself.
No, it's fine. Some guys are walking past, so yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So yeah, we really have had some great support from our local Harare community, especially, and obviously at reduced rates, local rates, but it really has allowed us to continue these incredible, conservation efforts and keep our team employed, etc. We have had a few incidents, criminality, for example, our solar panels that are kind of remote on the property. There has been some kind of thieving of that that we've had to deal with, and that has resulted in a few challenges, but we have managed to overcome where we can. Speaking specifically within the Victoria Falls community, unfortunately, the local communities have not been particularly impacted by the virus itself. However, from an economic perspective, the impact has obviously been very serious in the area, and this will take quite a lot of time to recover. The town itself has seen quite a large de-urbanization. And we obviously rely on the future to kind of correct that in time to come. Thankfully, there has been a great community effort that has assisted with an incredible fundraising program. It's a children's feeding program, which has to date raised $60,000, and this has somewhat eased the burden for some of these local communities. In the past, many of our guests have really enjoyed the experience of a village tour, for example, in which they've been able to interact with the local communities on the rural outskirts of Victoria Falls. And unfortunately, this experience has not been and won't be able to be offered for the foreseeable future due to COVID. But again, as everyone else has kind of tried to shed a positive light on things, I do think what the global travel ban has shown us is the importance of us as a global tourism community standing together and really to ensure the longevity of our industry, and in turn that which we preserve and nurture and create not to be compromised. So we remain hopeful that this too shall pass, and that once again we will be able to welcome back our global traveler to Africa and really be able to ensure that the legacy that we leave for future generations is protected. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Haley. Another topic is how can we connect luxury travel with responsible tourism and encourage high net worth individuals to leave a positive legacy in Africa? I will start with you, Sally. Can you share your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the things that we're finding with luxury travel in this particular area is that luxury travel is no longer so ostentatious as it was in the 90s. It's not all about flying in the most expensive champagne or having sheets with the greatest thread count. We're finding that luxury is actually more in having personalized travel itineraries, more authentic travel experiences, opportunities that are not open to the mass tourism market. It's about customized, tailored travel experiences for smaller groups that are able to come in and really interact with the local community, have a learning experience whilst they're here, having an experience that doesn't necessarily impact the environment adversely. And that's where it sort of connects with that responsible travel, which I think if you were to simplify it, for me, responsible travel is all about just having good manners. And so that means coming into an area and respecting the customs and traditions of the Indigenous or local people in that area. It's learning a little bit about the country that you're traveling to, or doing some research before you actually travel, to familiarise yourself with a few words, you know, just to be able to say hello and to be able to say thank you in the local dialects, to read up in advance on acceptable dress codes. It's about respecting the wildlife and the conservation areas and taking into consideration park rules and guidelines. Also about coming in these smaller groups and ensuring that you're supporting the local community by researching in advance to ensure the operators you're selecting are working with the local farmers to purchase local agriculture, and that the menus are being created from what's being purchased locally and supporting the local farmers and environment. But it's supporting local tour operators. I think that we all know that if you've got a safari guide that's growing up in that particular area, they know the secret locations to go to see the best things. It's also encouraging the next generation of safari guides and drivers to educate themselves and respect nature and work with these groups of travellers. It's also about selecting people that support other local businesses. We've sort of touched on, all of us, about community groups that are bringing in artefacts, etc., that are authentic and made from the region, not brought in from other countries or overseas. So I think responsible tourism and luxury tourism, it's about doing a lot of research before you book your experience, making sure that you're working with providers that support local communities and that you're getting authentic cultural experiences, not that front of house show, but actually engaging and learning. I think one of the things that we hear most that people really enjoy about their time in Africa is the friendliness of the people that look after them here. The Tanzanians are naturally hospitable people, and they create a connection with the guests because they're also naturally curious. So they'll ask the guests questions and engage with them. They learn from the guests, and the guests in turn learn back from them. And I think it's that ongoing experience of forming a connection with the people whilst they're here. So it's smaller, itemized, you know, personalized itineraries that guests are learning from, but they're also putting back directly into the local community as well.
Agreed. There's many trends evolving in the luxury travel industry, such as slow travel and wellness escapes. Do you think catering to trends like this can be impactful strategy for the luxury market, Gus?
Okay. Yeah, I think certainly the longer stays in an area, and then in one location, and then perhaps longer stays in the region is certainly going to make a big difference to how that guest experiences or impacts, I think, the people in the region. But I think perhaps more importantly for us here is the relationship we heard from Julie just now from the long run. And I think organizations like the Long Run actually help guide a property that perhaps is focused on their own product to start incorporating ideas and initiatives from other places. So to make sure that the luxury choices that are made for people visiting Africa are the right choices. I think inspiration, once guests are here, to give guests options to get involved and make sure that we share the stories. I think we have a responsibility to educate people, when they hear on, if they haven't been asking the questions before they arrive, I think when they get here, we have a responsibility to share our story, to share our journey with places like the Long Run, and to share journeys of other properties that are embarking on the same route.
Agreed. And lastly, our last question, how can the safari industry evolve to become even more sustainable in 2021 and beyond? I will start that with Robert. Can you share your ideas on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the moment it's all about survival. It's pretty dire out here. So that's the main objective. And then I guess, that saying that we've all heard that I guess we would have preferred not to have heard is never waste a good crisis. But, this pandemic certainly has exposed the DNA of a number of organizations. And I would, in terms of how we can learn and be better and improve from a customer selection point of view, I guess, looking in through this period on how organizations have behaved and what they've done in terms of supporting their community and their conservation efforts during an incredibly difficult cash flow period. I think, scratch below the surface, look into how certain companies behaved, and those are the partners of the future. And that would be taking something out of this incredibly difficult period that we still remain in. That would be once we've survived, of course.
Agreed. James, what are your thinking, your thoughts about it?
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I guess I need to say thank you to Lee. Thank you to Sally. Lee, first up, thanks for mentioning Simon Sinek. If anybody has the time to listen to a TED Talk given by Simon Sinek about the Golden Circle and defining your why, then I would encourage you all to do it. I was lucky enough to listen to him years and years ago in the US, and it changed a lot of my thinking. In brief, it's about defining yourself by why you do something rather than what you do. So within Lemala, it's actually really, really simple. We want to leave Africa better than we found her. Now, we've gone through all the things that we've about what we actually do, but Rob, to speak to your comment, I fully believe that those companies that survive will thrive by doing it right. And I would define doing it right by reference to communities. And those communities would include people's staff, their local communities, our next door neighbors, our local farmers, as Sally says, the people that we exist amongst. And don't forget our travel community, the people that we are all hugely dependent on, that I would like to think those companies that have treated those three community elements well and respectfully will be those that will be supported by that travel trade in the future. So as you say, do your research, work out who the good guys are, by extension, the bad guys, and then please support the good guys. And if I want to be really aggressive about it, punish the bad guys. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Do business with people that walk the talk rather than that actually deliver, rather than just say, people are at the core of our business. I'm convinced there are a lot of people in this world who would have who would struggle to stand with their hand on their heart and reiterate that at the moment. So yeah, there's a challenge to the travel industry. Work with the good people.
Yeah. Good challenge. Lisa, would you like to add your thoughts here from a operator's perspective to us?
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to speak from a sort of a product perspective at Ker Downey. Traveling with our clients, we've got to make sure that traveling with a purpose is of utmost importance. And I think that should be for all tour operators to pass that on to their clients. We can most certainly influence the choices of our customers by giving them a selection of responsible lodges and hotels. So we've got to make sure that all of these focus on environment, they support the community, and could also offer educational programs like a junior rangers program, for example. It's very important that as a tour operator, we pass on this knowledge to younger generations. I think it's important that we provide this information to the client at the time of quoting, we could let them know why we've chosen this particular property or itinerary and what they're doing for sustainability. It's important that we support environmental tours, cultural tours, social development. And I think it's also important for operators to run a sustainable office with an in-house recycling system. It's important that we practice as tour operators what we expect of our suppliers. And that's why in our product team, we make sure that we partner with providers like these that are on the call, that go above and beyond to make sure that they're eco-friendly. A lot of time and effort goes into searching each property individually. Our particular company, we've spent over 3 months on a project researching every single property that we have, including these on the call. And we also make sure we go to each lodge. For example, my colleague Emma went to Tswalu last week, and I was actually at Kortbos on the weekend. So it's great that Julie mentioned them as part of the long run. So we can actually attest to the fact that they are really sustainable. So we need to make sure that we see each lodge and we make sure that they live by what they say they are. Part of what we look for is, wildlife conservation, environmental awareness, community upliftment, and even volunteering experiences. And I know they've got that at Shamwari, where the Born Free Foundation is as well with Catherine. We also look for lots of affiliations. We've got over 20 affiliations that I've researched that we make sure that the properties belong to. For example, the long run that Julie is part of. We also make sure that we can support charities by asking the clients to donate a certain percentage, or we partnered with a company called Green Pop, where we can get the clients to plant a tree. For $8, they can plant a tree for when they're traveling with us. And we also need to make sure that you give a responsible tourism policy to your clients with some travel tips, some guides. All of that's very important at the time, just before they're about to travel. I know Sally also touched on that by making sure that the clients are aware, she mentioned manners, etc. So all of that we put in our tourism policy. So I think it's simple things like that that every tour operator can do that will help make the clients travel more sustainable.
I agree.
Thank you.
I agree, and thank you, Lisa. She speaks for the whole team at Ker Downey Africa, and we do focus a lot on the good partners, let's say. So lastly, I have one question from a journalist, Donna Richardson, who would like more information on the responsible travel offering for families. I will direct that question to James. Can you share with us some information on the Cubs Club at Lemala and how it plays a role in educating children on wildlife and conservation?
Sure. I think our Lemala Clubs program actually is born out of the fact that we bring our staff families into camp every so often, so they get a chance to test what mummy and daddy do. And anybody that's either been in childcare or as a parent understands that if you keep the kids busy and the kids happy, then mum and dad can relax. So just as a bit of history, both myself and my wife, who's the CEO, literally my boss, are educators by training. So what we've created is opportunity to do something just a little bit exciting for kids to stimulate the enjoyment levels born out of spending time with a Maasai warrior on the highlands of above the Serengeti, teaching people how to use bows and arrows, how to throw a Maasai spear, how to track, how to light a fire, the standard things. But at the same time, adding to that an educational level where we encourage the kids to learn about tracking or about a certain species and then challenge them to go back to camp and actually put that across to their parents. So we like to challenge them to become the teachers of the guys that have brought them there, with the idea that they take that back home and they become ambassadors, not just for Lemala, that would be nice, but mostly for Mother Africa.
Awesome, great project. Also, Sally, I know that you guys have a project called to donate a desk to the school nearby, and I would like to ask you a little bit about how do you think that can help also children to educate them in terms of seeing a different school outside from their countries, their origin countries?
Well, I think for most of the guests that we have coming here and the children, they have a relatively privileged sort of background. Their experience with school facilities, school equipment, infrastructure is completely different to what they discover when they arrive here in Tanzania, and especially here in Karatu. We have a huge youth population. I'm not sure if you're aware, but Robert mentioned that we have 65 million people in the population of Tanzania. The average age is 19 years old. In an average classroom here in Karatu, we have 70 students in a classroom. So that's often 3 kids that are sitting at every one desk. The textbooks are shared. They're very well leafed through and used and utilised. So it's quite a different experience. They don't have the abundance of supplies in terms of sporting equipment. The grounds aren't as groomed and kept as you're going to find in other places. So it's a real eye-opener for a lot of these children when they step into the grounds of our local community schools here. And the donation of a desk is quite a small thing to do. Our carpenters in-house actually build them. We need 3 days notice that a family or group want to give a desk, and then the desk is built on their behalf and it's taken down to the school and put into one of the classrooms, and it just allows the kids to have a little more elbow space. It makes the classroom experience for them a lot more enjoyable, but having that interaction in the school and just seeing how genuinely happy these kids are with what they have, I think is a very important lesson for all of us. You know, it's about, you know, health, community, and it's the engagement, and they really love to interact. We are a bit mindful. I think it was Lisa who mentioned about going into community groups now with the COVID. We do have to be careful about that. We ensure that all of our guests wear masks and are doing this sanitizing. We check with the head teachers if they will allow, if we're able to go in, and then that they reiterate with the children that we do have to social distance and not to touch. Because I can say that before COVID, there certainly wasn't any social distancing in the classrooms when we would go and visit. The singing and the dancing carried on, which included a lot of hand holding and a lot of sitting down right next to you and touching your hair because it's different. Very interactive experience, but as I said, it is amazing. It's very educational to see it firsthand and to see just how happy they are with what they've got. And it does encourage ongoing relationships. We find from simple things like pen pal relationships that we assist with, where families will send us letters via email that we print off and take down to the school. The kids handwrite a letter back, we scan those and send them back, and it has this continued relationship which starts through the school, which is really quite lovely to see as well.
Great, thank you very much, Sally. We have one last question from one agent, one of our agents, and I'm going to direct this one to Robert. Do you believe that the worldwide lockdown will really change the client's behavior in terms of deciding on a more sustainable property?
I mean, no one knows what what's gonna happen tomorrow. So it's difficult to predict with absolute certainty. But I think, you know, I think through, again, as I referenced a bit earlier, through any crisis, one's personal values are assessed, one's habits and one's travel behaviors are reviewed and given thought to. We certainly are more conscious of humans the impact that they've had, both negative and positive, I believe. So, I just think there is real opportunity for Africa to lead the way in terms of, we've been, we live on this continent, we love this continent, and we're passionate about preserving this delicate ecology. And I think in terms of Africa leading the way is a lot of the issues surrounding, be it some of the kind of value questions that are being brought through in this pandemic. And I think Africa positions itself very well to present examples of best practice and best of breed, in terms of being considerate of and being engaged in it rather than dismissive or hiding from it, in terms of the inequality gap, owning our own problems, protecting an area which we wish to do for generations to come. So I just think maybe pre-COVID we were all so buried in our crazy manic lives of rushing from airport to trade show to back to lodge to, and I think it's allowed us to really breathe, and it's been such a sustained period of time that I think habit change will has set in. And again, hopefully through that there is more of a global consciousness around the climate and around delicate ecosystems, and therefore an appreciation for what the story that Africa has to tell.
Yeah, and I also think that this is part of the responsibility of the DMCs as well, in terms of what we offer to the clients and of what we offer to the agents when they are asking us to organize them and create them an experience in Africa. We can come up with the suggestions that we believe that are more sustainable and that will really improve and be valuable for Africans. So I think it's part of our job as a DMC as well to offer those properties to them. James, go ahead. You raised your hand. Thank you, Robert. Thank you very much.
I think if you wind the clock back 20 years and you look at the likes of Travel and Leisure and Condé Nast and their 100 best hotels in the world, uniformly they were Southeast Asia, probably exemplified by Mandarin Oriental or Oman Resorts. If you look over the last decade, they've been dominated by African hospitality brands. And I think that's really simple. There's been a shift in the zeitgeist, in the mood on the street, and that is to whatever buzzwords you want to use, but smaller locations with smaller numbers of rooms, where you learn something, where you give something back, and where you achieve something. And Africa has always delivered that in spades. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I hope there is never a 300-bed hotel in the middle of the Serengeti National Park. I don't care how good a driver somebody is. I'm not going to give them $100,000 worth of Land Cruiser and say self-drive through the Serengeti. And by definition, you're not going to take anything away from a trip to Africa unless you have a guide next to you that explains the behavior of that large male elephant that's bouncing down the road, just getting a little bit excited and leaking behind his eye. You have to have engaging experiences. It's what Africa's always delivered and delivered in spades. I think that the COVID environment where we're seeing in the States a mass exodus from congested urban areas and wealthy people emigrating to places that they would never even consider beforehand because they are quiet, because they are separated from other people, because they can listen to the sound of their heartbeat, exactly matches what this continent delivers. From a commercial point of view, if I was sitting on the other side of any of these desks and I was selling trips, I would be saying to people, it's really simple. Africa delivers what you want in a post-COVID environment. You can stay in a tent where the nearest person is 30 odd yards away. If you want to eat and sleep in that room and not see anybody else other than the guide, you can do it. You can be in a vehicle with open air, plenty of vitamin, whichever it is that comes from the sunshine. You can have all those things and you can feel good emotionally about what you are giving and at the same time that which you're taking. And I'm absolutely convinced in the next 2 or 3 years, Africa brands will be higher up those charts than even they have been for the last 10 years.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks very much, James. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you everyone for your questions, and it is time to wrap it up. Overall, I think it's imperative that the travel industry continues to evolve and become more in tune with responsible travel practices. I would like to thank very much our panelists here and partners here today, and everyone who has joined us today. It was really, really special. The webinar will be available on the Ker Downey Africa YouTube channel. So if you missed anything or would like to share the webinar, you will find it there. And please follow us. I hope you found this webinar insightful. And if you have any further questions, you can feel free to send me an email, marcelo@ker-downeyafrica.com, and I'll be pleased to answer to you guys. Thank you everyone very much. I hope you have a good evening, everyone, and see you soon again.
Thanks very much, Marcelo. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you, Rob.